My name is Peter Iwanowicz. I'm the Executive Director of Environmental Advocates in New York, and I'm really pleased that you're all here as we gather to not only mark the 45th anniversary of Earth Day, but also to sort of chart forward where we're going in the next 45 years, this being that first year. The press materials on the table have a short list of some of the more notable accomplishments that New Yorkers have achieved together over the past 45 years to improve public health, to protect the environment, and to restore our sort of natural resources. One year in particular rings out to me, and I'm young in this sort of movement, but one year in particular rings out to me, 1993. In that single year, we enacted together the Long Island Pine Barrens Protection Act, the Environmental Protection Fund, and the Clean Air Compliance Act. These are legacy laws and legacy standards that not only this generation, but future generations will reap the rewards from: healthier air to breathe, more open space protected, more communities enhanced through the funding of the Environmental Protection Fund. That was one session, probably maybe 6 weeks of one session after years of advocacy that those bills all came together. We can do that in the past, and we can do that again. So what a year that was. Let's call in the legislature to make 2015 a year like 1993 with successes. We got 6 weeks left. Can we do it, gentlemen? All right, we're with you. So New York has a great history of leading on environmental issues, with Republicans and Democrats alike standing up to protect our environment and public health. Yet the greatest challenges are ahead of us, particularly climate change and public health issues. New Yorkers have a right to know what's in their food, have a right to know whether the chemicals that are being put in children's have a right to know whether the chemicals that are in children's toys are toxic and whether they'll lead to health impacts. We should do our best to remove them from them. New Yorkers have a right to clean drinking water and sewer systems that work. We saw some notable action this year in the legislature to improve that situation. And I think for environmental advocates and a lot of the legislators here, we're looking for leadership not only in the legislature but from the governor, so that New York can continue its leadership role. When you look at the issues that are sort of laid out in the press release, when you hear about the items that are in the past budget that was just enacted, when you hear from my colleagues in the environmental community today about what we're fighting for in the years ahead, New York has that opportunity to continue to be a leader on environmental issues nationwide, and this is a year to do it. So those are my opening remarks. I've kept them extremely brief to set a tone for my colleague advocates, and I know you're all saving your breath for your floor debates later today, so you'll be brief as well. But I want to turn now to the legislators who are here with us, and I'll introduce them one by one as they come up. And after we hear that, we'll also hear brief remarks from the colleague organizations that are here today to talk about a range of different issues that we want to see done, not only this year to protect current generations, but for future generations as well. So first I want to introduce Assemblyman Steve Engelbright. Steve is the new chair of the Assembly's ENCON committee. So Chairman Engelbright.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's really wonderful to be here on Earth Day, especially, and to be joined with my Assembly colleague, Felix Ortiz, as well as my other colleagues from both sides of the aisle and from both houses. Just a few thoughts on this 45th anniversary of our celebration of Earth. We have just completed a budget, and some of the things that we've accomplished so far in this session, I think, give us hope that we might be as productive, or at least begin to be as productive as that 1993 year that Peter Iwanowicz spoke of. This year we refinanced Superfund for another decade, ensuring sufficient funding to clean up past and future environmental misdeeds. We increased funding for the Environmental Protection Fund. Although it wasn't the increase that I wanted, I was pleased that EPF once again was moving in an upward direction. We still have a long way to go to achieve prior funding levels, but I fully recognize the importance of the EPF and will continue to advocate for additional increases. We also provided $200 million in funding over the next 3 years to invest in municipal wastewater and drinking water infrastructure. And if the session is like a basketball game, we've just completed halftime, and now we move to the second half, the closing part. We begin that today with 6 bills in the Assembly in celebration of Earth Day. These include some very important topics. Climate change. The bill that I'm sponsoring will be one of the 6 most important bills. Let me just make the observation that the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration indicated that February marked the 30th year of higher than average monthly temperatures worldwide. This was followed in March by an announcement that the globally average temperature over land and ocean surfaces for March 2015 was the highest for the month since record-keeping began in 1880. The impact on business, on commerce, on quality of life, on certainty for our children for the future is all at play when the climate is itself at play. We really need to address this issue. Similarly, children's products. The environment, to a large extent, is about the future, our children. We will be taking up a Children's Safe Products Act bill today. Microbeads, plastics in the environment, has been something that I focused on for many, many years. Legislator Schimmel today will help lead us on a debate that I believe has a real chance of being a major accomplishment for this session, to ban microbeads in cosmetic and other products. Environmental justice. Crystal Peoples will help lead us on issues that relate to fairness and the interface between our communities and the environment in the sense of what is right and what is appropriate. And mercury. Studies by the Environmental Protection Agency indicate that as many as 600,000 children per year are born with levels of mercury high enough to lower their IQ. We need to address this issue. As we go into the session in its second half, I look forward to many accomplishments. I look forward to working with these wonderful advocates and with my colleagues, and I look forward to having another press conference a little later to celebrate these accomplishments.
Sounds good, Don. Last and not least from the elected official side is Senator Boyle, sponsor of the Child Safe Products Act, also a frequent winner of Environmental Advocates Awards from our sister publication where we do our scorecards. The Senator's been a tireless advocate, not only for Child Products Act, but a real strong supporter for climate action. So, Senator, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Peter, and thank you to my colleagues in government, advocates, and all of you for being here. I don't think many of you in the room are old enough to remember the first Earth Day 45 years ago, but being 53 years old, I do. And I remember mostly because my elementary school had a poetry contest, and I wrote the poem. It was the poetry about protecting the Earth in the first Earth Day, and my poem, I Am the Earth, won from my entire elementary school. Despite that, my career as a poet did not take off. But I'm happy to be as part of the State Senate now with my colleagues in other ways to protect the Earth. And we have a strong environmental agenda for this session, and most importantly, near and dear to all of our hearts, is the Child Safe Product Act, which now, and thank you, Assemblyman, Mr. Chairman, about passing it today in the State Assembly, and we now have more than half of the senators on as co-sponsors, which says it must be brought to the floor this session, as was said, with my mentor and former Senator Owen Johnson, who was a great environmental advocate himself, and he was there during the early 90 years for the big environmental push. We can make 2015 like the early 90s as an environmental forefront in our agenda. And I promise, and I pledge today to the Senate leadership, when we bring the Child Safe Products Act to the floor for a vote in the Senate, I'm going to read my poem. Thank you.
Next up is Kathy Curtis with the organization Clean and Healthy New York.
Thanks, Peter. Thanks. I too remember the first Earth Day, and I remember the spirit of hope and the sweeping federal legislation that came out as a result of that, the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, and there's no question that our air and water is cleaner as a result of those, however imperfect, federal laws. I would say that the last uncharted wilderness, the last frontier, if you will, for such sweeping legislation would be in the realm of toxic chemicals. And according to materials accounting data done by the states of Washington and New Jersey, about 95% of the toxic chemicals that leave a manufacturing facility don't do so in the air or the water or on land-based dumping, but in the actual products, whether it's brake fluid or perm solution or a binky in a baby's mouth. So that's really what we need to address. And the last, bastion of the use of toxic chemicals is in the products that we all use every day. And children, in particular, of course, are more vulnerable. And we're still seeing burgeoning rates, growing rates of pediatric cancer, obesity, asthma, autism, and other learning disabilities, and other diseases of environmental origin, many of which that have lifelong consequences. So this is the year to pass the Child Safe Products Act, and New York can be a leader in protecting not only children in New York State, but children in Wyoming and Indiana and Mississippi and other states that are not likely to be as the same type of leader. So this is the year. Let's get it through NCON. Let's get it to the floor. Thank you.